Like things are starting to slow down a bit, so we'll go ahead and get things started. So hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us from. Thank you for all of you for joining us for today's Mountain Talk presentation on the rise of generative AI with Professor Burak Eskici. This is a topic I'm really excited to talk about. We've had a really large interest from our alums and other people around the Lehigh University community to learn more about this. This is something that we're talking about in everyday culture, in the news, in the media, and we're really excited to see kind of where we're going to go from here. So. A couple of housekeeping notes that I wanted to acknowledge before we begin. The presentation today is being recorded, so if you have to drop off early to jump into a meeting or another engagement, that's totally okay. We can send you the link after it's processed and recorded. As well, you please use the chat box at the bottom of your screen for any questions. We will have an open dialogue Q&A with our speaker today to dig into the questions that you guys may have throughout the presentation. And to do that, to kind of kick things off and kind of get a sense for all of you, a quick poll that I wanted to launch for everybody, just to get a sense of what is your engagement and what is your familiarity with artificial intelligence. So just a couple of quick questions to help us get an understanding of kind of where your interest is at and kind of what your experience has been like with generative AI. So with that, I'm going to do a brief introduction for our speaker, and then we will kick off the conversation. So today's speaker is Professor Burak Eskici. Burak is a teaching assistant professor in the data department here at Lehigh, where he co-directs the computer science and business program. He currently is teaching courses in computing, data science, quantitative models, and AI, both at the undergraduate and graduate levels. Before joining Lehigh, Burak was a researcher at the World Bank, focusing on projects related to digital development and financial inclusion. His professional experience also includes serving as a research program director at the University of California, San Diego, JPAL, South Asia, and India, as well as a senior lecturer at Harvard University. Burak holds a bachelor's and master's degree in industrial engineering from, Burak, forgive me if I butcher this,
No worries.
Boğaziçi University in Turkey,
Yep.
and a master's and PhD in sociology from Harvard with specializations in computational social science and quantitative models. So as we get the questions coming in, we'll end the poll in just a minute or two as things are coming in. But it looks like for the majority of our attendees so far, looks like we've got most of our attendees have at least used some form of generative AI at this point. So we're looking at roughly 77% that have used it before. And then for those that have used it regularly, we're kind of split across the board. About 15 to 20% that are using it almost daily, about 25% that use it weekly, another 20% that use it occasionally, and some that have hardly used it ever. Biggest concerns around AI currently, the biggest one so far, nearly 50%, is ethical misuse, so manipulation, bias, deepfakes, but also concerns around privacy and unpredictability. And then things that you're most excited for, complex problem solving and personalized digital assistance. So it looks like we got a pretty good experience so far for our audience here. So if anybody wants to look through and kind of see what the results of the poll were, I've just shared those out. And with that, I'm really excited to pass the reins off to Professor Burak Eskici. So Burak, take us away and tell us about the rise of generative AI.
Thank you very much. I mean, it's such a big topic. I hope I will try to cover the basics. And I have a couple of goals to establish here. The one, like maybe the most, you have 23% of people who have never used generative AI, and some of the people about like more than, I would say, 60% using it occasionally, it teaches monthly or less. And maybe it will create a little bit more enthusiasm about the topic as well. So I have like three goals here. The one is kind of creating kind of a foundational understanding of generative AI, and second is focusing on what are the recent trends in this space. And the third one, what's happening in the business, work, and society, and some policy implications. I have like 20, 24, 5 minutes. It's a very short amount of time. It's going to be mostly kind of the covering the basics, but I'm very excited or looking forward to for the conversation after this. And before I start, I would like to also share, I'm sure our alumni is going to be happy to hear that at Lehigh and also at the College of Business, This is a very forefront topic. We are trying to establish new programs that will kind of put generative AI into our teaching and research and programs. This year of learning topic is generative AI at the College of Business. We have series of events. And as recently as like the last month with two of my colleagues, we established a new research lab focusing on the business impact of the generative AI, which is AI BRL. Hopefully you will be hearing more from us in this topic as well. Just to begin, as a kind of a laying the ground, the generative AI is already here. It is one of the fastest adopted technological innovation in the last decade. It reached about 5 days for ChatGPT to reach 1 million users, and about 2 months to reach 100 million monthly active users. And if you look at like the compare, it took 2.5 years for Instagram and 5 years for Twitter, or now X, to reach the same number. And as of last month, ChatGPT has about 400 million weekly active users, which is not only kind of expands the number, but the active users goes from monthly to weekly. And I think very soon they will start measuring this mostly kind of the daily users. And we know that from a lots of research, it saves us time and expands our capabilities. The one is it saves with different polls between 2 to 10 hours weekly for professionals. And very soon it's expected to reclaim up to 30% of the work hours in the long term. By the way, I have lots of like the links in the presentation. If anyone wants to go further and read, I think we will be able to share the slides after the event as well. So it saves a lot of time. And depending on your kind of occupation, if you're a coder, for example, there's a study shows that they can code like 55% faster. Lawyers, marketers, content creators, it is a huge gain in terms of time save at the personal level. And beyond, there are a series of research showing that it gives people kind of lowers the barrier enter to new set of kind of skills. If you don't have any kind of experience with coding or data analysis, it is much easier now with the generative AI get into this space. And there are lots of evidence showing these kind of results as well. And this time saving or personal level efficiency gain is at the personal level. For example, I use a lot less time writing my emails. I use a lot of generative AI. I may save, for example, 5 hours in a week in my email writing or responding. It depends up to me what I will do with that 5 hours. I can go spend time with my kids, play outside. I can write another kind of like a research report or something. It depends on what I will do. So then one of the next biggest kind of inflection point in the generative AI is to figure out how to take this individual level efficiency gain and make it kind of organizational level at the kind of the higher organizational level productivity gains. But before even that, the organizational adoption of AI is also picking up very rapidly. The McKinsey has a kind of a series of reports called the State of AI. The recent one came about a month ago or so. And this is the kind of one of the graphs, as you can see. The dark blue line shows the percentage of companies that use of AI, at least for one business function. And as you can see here, between 2018 to 2023, it was kind of a stagnant around like 50%. And it was mostly for data analysis, machine learning, which is part of the AI. But with the advent of generative AI in 2023, first with ChatGPT and all other kind of products, now about 80% of the companies are using AI in at least one business function. And 70% of the companies are using using generative AI in that business function as well. And more importantly, it's kind of getting more and more. It's kind of transforming the business. Now it is beyond just data analysis or machine learning. Now with the content creation or improving kind of the efficiency in the business processes, the number of companies using generative AI or AI in 3 or more functions also kind of exponentially increasing in the last year. And that trend shows it's not going to slow down. It will only kind of be going in one direction until we reach around like the 90-95% in the next couple of years. And AI is not new, actually. It has a long history. AI is a kind of a very small part. I will not go into details about the technical part, but we think about like the linguistic, like the meaning of words, and the AI kind of some kind of a prediction. In the intersection, we have the natural language processing, and actually GPTs, or this large language models that we talk about, generative AI, is a very small intersection of this part. What do we have in this AI space? It's not new. We have the term in 1956, and there are lots of ups and downs in the last 75, 80 years in the AI space. But there are two things I want to mention that this is very new. This is beyond the hype by the generative AI is. The one is between 2005, 2010, the machine learning, this predictive power became much better because we have a lot more data with the internet, and we have a lot better computational power. And these are the methods that do much better with this data and computational power. But in the last 5 to 7 years, we have two big events in the NLP, natural language processing space. The one is word embeddings, which is basically we converted words and put 52,000 numbers for each word, which means now we were able to put some meaning into those numbers. For example, history as a kind of a word is represented by 52,000 words in English language. For this, 52,000 numbers, right? And those numbers actually have some kind of a semantic meaning to it. And the second part is context-aware models, which is we can also update the meaning depending on the context. So when I say AI has a long history versus I have a history class this afternoon, that history, the numbers, 52,000 numbers for the history word is different in these two contexts. So these two big kind of the technological innovations in the methods gave us this massive pre-trained models, which we call large language models. GPT-3 is one of them, GPT-4 is one of them, Gemini is one of them. All of this generative AI actually built on top of these massive pre-trained models. So here we have a genuine new technological breakthrough in the AI space. Then why we should care about this? If you haven't convinced yet, it is creating a lot of economic kind of outputs. It's expected by 2030 about like a $4.4 trillion growth in the GDP in globally. And these are a little bit kind of outdated kind of numbers. I assume this number is going to get bigger and bigger as we advance more. This is on the positive side. On the kind of the concern side, there's a lot of concerns about generative AI. It has huge implications on the society. The first part, as many people kind of a concern, is that the ethics part of it. There's a lot of misinformation. It's much easier to create deepfakes and misinformation right now. The concerns about privacy and surveillance, since it's going to get more powerful and powerful. It will create bias and discrimination if we don't have enough with the social media today. These models require a lot of electricity, a lot of water to be able to run. So there will be huge environmental impact. Depending on the access, it may increase the economic inequality within the societies and across the societies. There's a huge workforce transformation. There will be definitely some job displacement, which will require reskilling or upskilling. And there's a huge general concern about what if we are going to lose our creativity? What if we give everything to generative AI and we become not creative as the humankind? And the last one, it has a huge implications on the global politics, China versus US, who is going to lead, because it is such an important value. There's a lot of kind of a global AI arms race going on around these topics. With this, with this introduction, let me talk about the recent events, and then we will lay the ground for the business impact for the discussion. But before maybe the recent trends, I want to talk about the value chain. Who are the key players in this generative AI space? And maybe it will help us to position ourselves depending on our job description, our job level, and the industry we are in. As I mentioned, at the core, we have these foundation model developers, large language models, GPTs, you can talk whatever it is, but these are the usual suspects that we have Google and Meta as kind of the old school technological innovations, the XAI, which is kind of a Twitter, or the X kind of the AI company, and we have OpenAI, the leading company in this space, as well as Anthropic and Perplexity. As recently as we have DeepSeek, a Chinese company, and Alibaba is doing a lot in this space as well. This is kind of the heart of the entire value chain, which gives us this human-like responses when we ask a question. These foundational models need a lot of resource. They need the cloud providers such as AWS or Azure, the Microsoft. They have data center companies, which is hundreds of thousands of GPUs or processors put together to process this data. And they need huge amounts of data, which we have the data providers or the data brokers, which takes the internet data or any kind of data, clean them up, and to be available for these foundational model training. And this infrastructure starts with the chip companies, NVIDIA's and AMD's and Intel's, that they are extremely important in this space. And the energy providers, that all of these require a lot of electricity to be able to develop. And all of this is actually to create a value for either enterprises, which is kind of the second, or the individual end users here. And between these, we have two types of companies. The one is AI app developers, any kind of the app that claims that they are using AI, that are using the foundation models and wrap this around kind of a good product and serve to the use of individuals or enterprises. And we have also like the big enterprise solution providers such as Salesforce or Oracle or SAP, which are trying to establish more kind of the better business processes and provide solutions for the enterprises. So in this value chain, the core is in foundational models. And of course, the trends are more around these foundation models and what they are doing. It actually shapes the entire value chain in the generative AI space. And these foundational models are evolving. They are very different than 3 years ago, how they looked. And now the multi-modal AI, which is you can send a text, you can send an image to ChatGPT, and it can deal at the same time with this. In the original days, it was kind of a converting to text and then processing this. And these foundational models are huge, and it is very costly to train them. For example, GPT-4, OpenAI's GPT, largest GPT up to date, cost more than $100 million to train by it. Then the next one, and the growth is kind of an exponential, is expected to cost about $1 billion to train this model. So as some of you may know, but these foundation models work like this. So they have a pre-training process. They take a lot of data and come up with these weights, or let's say the models or formulas. And then when you ask a question, the interface goes back and put your question into these models and get the response. The biggest part or the cost is this kind of the pre-training part. So since it's very costly, we have now innovative ways of training. This is how DeepSeek actually came up with much kind of a better or like an equal performance model, which at the fraction of a cost. And we also kind of doing new stuff on the reasoning or a part, not necessarily in the pre-training, but when you ask the question, doing some kind of a trick to get better performance from these models. These are becoming two key fronts in the development in the last couple of months. And this reasoning, which is this trick when you ask the question, enhances the performance a lot. This is an output from OpenAI, and this is kind of the blue is without the reasoning, which is the trick after you ask the question, just the pre-training. And the orange one is how much it improves when you do this trick with the reasoning part. And you can see in the machine learning benchmarks, PhD level science questions, exams, and anything, it kind of enhanced the performance a lot. So this is a big deal in the sense that how well responses we are getting from these models. And the second, from my the earlier point about this trick about pre-training, so this understanding or the belief that the bigger is better for this model is not necessarily true anymore. If you look at the number of parameters, which is y is equal to a plus bx, has two parameters or two weights in a simple linear equation, these models are actually very huge. GPT-4 is guessed, we don't know for sure, about 1 trillion weights or parameters in their model. But recently, we also have more focused, smaller, efficient AI models. Falcon is coming from United Arab Emirates, for example, does a pretty good job with 40 billion parameters. So 40 billion to 1 trillion there's a huge difference in terms of size. And even more recently, we have DeepSeek, which is a lot of parameters, but it is a trick, which is about 37 billion parameters. They are getting good enough results as equal to like the GPT-4 level performance. And with this kind of the advancements, there's a huge kind of a decline in the cost of access. These are the API costs kind of the for each kind of the big model. And right now, the API access, which is asking a question and getting an answer, is about 30 times cheaper compared to 1.5 years ago. And even more recently, as recently like 2 days ago, Baidu, the Alibaba's company, came up with their new model, and it's actually kind of a halving the price that the DeepSeek is offering right now, which is basically now 60 times cheaper compared to 1.5 years, which means the access is going to get cheaper and cheaper if you have more competition and better methods in this space. And as we discussed, despite the fact that we are getting away from the bigger the better, there's a huge, large infrastructure investments. These are some investment numbers for the AI companies investing in nuclear power and electricity. And also we have two big news in the last couple of weeks about AI, the OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle investing about $500 billion. So a little bit aspirational. The initial investment is about 100 billion, but again, this is a huge number in this space in terms of investment. And Apple also announced kind of an AI servers and manufacturing, which will total about $500 billion in the next 5 years. Again, given this kind of it's very costly, the firms are getting into this, making this investment in this space as well. And those investments also part of the global kind of AI arms race. When we look at the kind of the leaderboard in these large language models, these foundation models, these are the key companies in the top 10. We have a couple in the next 20, such as Anthropic and Perplexity and Meta's Llama. But basically, the US is kind of the leading, and China is kind of the second after US. And the Stanford University's human-centered artificial intelligence have an index for the countries. It's a kind of a weighted index. And as you can see, in terms of number, United States is about about 70 out of 100, and China is at 40. So United States is leading, but China is coming very, very rapidly. And one thing I just want to also mention here, for example, the United Arab Emirates or France or some of the countries actually can come very quickly, because AI also gives a huge advantage to the latecomers as well. But I think at the moment, as the United States, we are secure in this leadership, but it may change very rapidly, as we have seen with the DeepSeek. It is a very kind of a sensitive, becoming a global AI arms race, which has implications on tariffs on the GPUs or technological part, and lots of other implications on the real politics. And there are two important trends I want to mention for the business implications. The one is now we are at the forefront, or this inflection point, switching from individual efficiency gains to organizational level productivity. We know that it boosts personal efficiency, but there are now organizational AI integration. Salesforce is coming with their own model. Microsoft has their Copilot integrated their enterprise solution. SAP is coming up with Joule, which is their kind of a for the ERP solution. So there are this kind of a company level, enterprise solution level AI integration, as well as process level transformation, like the HR solutions, sales solutions, supply chain solutions, which integrates AI into this. So this is kind of the big opportunity at the moment to convert the individual efficiency gains into business level productivity. And the second one is, this is, I thought, a very big deal. Now we are moving towards an autonomous AI agents. When first ChatGPT came, it was just, we are asking a question, it gives you an answer. It was a passive assistant, right? So now we are getting into the space of proactive autonomous action by the autonomous AI agents. So they can independently define tasks, execute workflows, and make decisions without constant human supervision, right? So the use cases are a lot, from software developer to business and analyst. But it raises critical questions about accountability, who's going to be accountable for these AI agents, ethics, and safety standards. And I will come to this in a minute, then more in detail. So with all of these trends, the impact on the businesses and the workforce is tremendous. So we know that companies institutionalize the use of generative AI is expecting to get an efficiency improvement of 15 to 40%, depending on the industry. And we know that with the estimates are 23% of the jobs globally expected to be disrupted or significantly reshaped by AI in the next couple of years. This is not only like on jobs, but also another number is, I think this is very striking. 80% of the workforce is likely to see at least 10% of their tasks impacted. The numbers are not very important, but all of us, either it's going to be 10% of our tasks, 20% of our tasks, or 50% of our tasks will be impacted by AI. So will AI replace us? It's not very clear, but I am more optimistic about this. And one story from 1970s, we know that this graph shows the introduction of ATMs and what happened to the number of bank tellers, because there was similar conversations back in the day. But when the ATMs actually introduced, the number of bank tellers didn't increase, didn't decrease, or the ATMs didn't replace them. But the job description of bank tellers changed. Now they also offer credits or other conversations with the customers, which is more probably what's going to happen. Some of our parts of our job descriptions are going to change with the generative AI. But for a fact, we know that AI reduces the repetitive tasks, some of the admin stuff, routine writing, data entry, coding, and it enhances higher value activities for strategy, innovation, and client engagement, gives us much easier and quicker analysis in all of these as we are in the decision making or kind of the driving seat. But this emergence of AI agents, as quote unquote the term is synthetic labor or digital worker at the moment, is a big deal. So they will be able to, they are actually doing independently performing tasks. One example I want to give here, the Lehigh admissions office has a synthetic employee, they call it Lucy. It's a service provided by the College Wine, which is kind of the LinkedIn equivalent for high schoolers who are applying for the colleges. And we have a list of students who are opted in to be able to called by an AI or a kind of a bot. And Lucy has genuine conversations with the high schoolers who are thinking about applying to Lehigh. And we have the profiles of these students. So Lucy changes or adapts the conversation or the topics depending on the profile. And the average call duration is about 3.5 minutes. And we have calls, it is lasting as long as 18 to 19 minutes with the high schoolers. There's a huge advantage here because it's easily scalable. With the human kind of the admission officers, we can call up to 1,000 students, maybe 2,000 students. Now you can call anyone as any number that you want to. And the second, it does such a good job to kind of customize the conversation. And the third, I think the more important, the high schoolers are much comfortable talking to an AI bot because there's no judgment. They know that Lucy cannot judge them. Lucy is a super nice and without any judgment kind of a person or a kind of an AI bot who's trying to answer the questions of the high schooler for the Lehigh admission, for example. Another one, in October, the Google said over 25% of their source code is written by AI. And it's just a start, as kind of the CEO is kind of admitting. And maybe today it's much higher. But very soon, for all of the companies, maybe 80, if not 90% of the source code is going to be written by some kind of a generative AI or synthetic coder. So which brings us a lot of kind of questions or changes in the human, in the business processes. The human resource departments have a new challenge: how to manage these synthetic employees or hybrid teams, how to enhance their kind of performance or do performance management, because there's not like kind of an incentive you give more money or anything. Or on the software developer side, you might be a perfect coder, but now you need to learn how to train, how to onboard, and how to manage a generative AI coders or these synthetic or digital workers in your team. And it is valid for other parts as well, but these are the two very obvious examples of the synthetic labor. And beyond these kind of things, all of us need actually either upskilling, do better our jobs with the AI, and or reskilling if the AI may kind of replace us as well. So there's no need to panic, but I think the action is very much essential. And the fact is, AI is here, it is real, and it is not going anywhere. And there's a famous quote by Ethan Malik, who's one of the people that you should follow, who's a professor at Wharton. And he says the AI you are using now is the worst AI you will ever use. It is fact. It was the fact like a year ago. It was the fact like 2 years ago. It is the case. It's going to be in the next couple of years at least, if not longer, because it's such a new era and it's fastly developing in this space. And what you need, or what I need, depends on my job function, the industry I am in, and my expectations or aspirations on how AI can help me. And one thing also I just want to mention, we just need to be very cognizant about the time horizon. For example, prompting, which is how to ask a question to AI, was a very important skill about a year and a half ago. But now it's not anymore, because however I ask the question, AIs are getting much better to understand what I intended to ask actually. So now prompting is much less important compared to year and a half ago. But now what is relevant is how to manage these AI agents, how to train them, how to use them, how to integrate to my business processes. Maybe in a year and a half, it's not going to be the case. Maybe we will have AI agents who are going to define agents and manage them as well. And just getting into in the last couple of slides, in this part, I also want to mention that for everyone, the critical thinking and adaptability are crucial. If you think about it like a pyramid, at the top of this kind of the value chain is like the foundational model developers. And the second part, we have the AI solution developers or enterprise solution providers, Oracles and others. And I want to put like the Accentures and KPMG, some of the consultancy companies in this middle level. They will be providing AI solutions for the rest. And 90%, maybe 95% of us are in the rest. So here in this kind of a transition, it's more kind of a continuum. The IT department or the chief information officers in my company is very close to these enterprise solutions providers. They will be negotiating the deals. And the people who are developing these enterprise solutions are very close to foundational model developers as well. So it's more kind of a continuum. But at the end, most of us are in the rest, in this kind of the categorization. So I want to mention AI literacy for everyone is very, very crucial. It's similar like the financial literacy. Everyone needs to get into kind of a little bit detail and technical detail and understand what it takes, what is behind these models, what is under the hood of this foundation models, and how we can use and pros and cons for the different kind of models. And as I said, critical and strategical thinking, as well as being adaptable to new solutions, because the space is changing very rapidly. I created a course last semester for the undergrads. This is the foundations of AI for business. I developed the course in the summer, and in October, I had to change half of the course content because things were changing very rapidly. So the adaptability to this new era becomes very much important. And as I mentioned, for example, you might be a marketer and as a job function, and you might be more into AI for personalized messaging, software, or you might be a software developer. You are there for coding efficiency. And there are industry-specific kind of solutions. For example, healthcare requires AI for patient data analytics versus retail leverages AI for consumer behavior predictions. So there are going to be different skills or different kind of areas that you want to become. And the last, but I think more importantly, some may seek incremental productivity boosts. So if you are in that category, it's very much okay for you to just use ChatGPTs and to write emails more efficiently or consume material more efficiently. Or others, you might be more kind of would like to have some kind of disruptive innovation and get a competitive advantage. Then it will be a different story how you will kind of approach the AI kind of upscaling in this space. But Regardless, in this, why we should care about this. If you're not there for kind of the value, the competition does, right? Either at the individual level, those embracing AI become more productive, creating and valuable, and organizations that are adopting, and the countries as well, that the competition is every level. And there's a famous saying, everyone kind of, I'm sure you have heard about this: AI may not replace you, but a person who uses AI with efficiently and effectively may replace you at the end. But with all of these, why we should care about this, we should also care about all of these problems as well. The misinformation, the privacy, the environmental impact, the workforce transformation, and creativity, these are all subject to the policy discussion. And policy is a really hard, it's a very non-trivial question. At one end, we want to kind of regulate and have a little bit kind of a safeguard around these ethical concerns. But at the other end, we also want to increase the productivity and creativity and innovation on the business side, because the global AI arms race is very there. If as the US, if you restrict too much, maybe China is not doing exactly the same. So you may lose your competitive edge at the moment you have against China. But if you just do it as a kind of a free flow, anyone can do, like a Wild West, then you may have huge implications and problems in the long term as an unintended consequences of generative AI. This is why the policy space is very, very kind of messy. We had, with the previous administration, Biden administration, we had an AI Act. The Trump administration, with an executive order, kind of removed it, and now they are in the search for new inputs. A couple of companies released those inputs last week. If you're interested, you can take a look. But this is kind of a rapidly shaping, but it is one of the areas that the business is going much faster than the policy is following, which is concerning at some level, but it's also the fact that it is a non-trivial, very, very complex problem to solve. I will stop here, and I am more than happy to continue discussion with your questions.
Wonderful. Thank you, Burak.
And I apologize, I took a little bit longer than what I'm allowed to, but
it's a big topic. It's a really big topic. So Burak, if you have a few minutes, we can maybe go over the time frame, because I definitely want to make sure we address some of the questions from the chat. So we've had a couple of people ask about access to the YouTube link into the slides afterwards. Yes, absolutely. The recording will be available on YouTube. It'll take a couple of days for the marketing team to get it uploaded. But I have the list of all of the attendees, and I'd be happy to send that out to everyone in attendance and who registered. Likewise with the slides, I will drop my email into the chat right now. And I have a copy of the slides that I'd be happy to share out. So we're happy to open the floor for questions for anybody who's curious. There were a couple of questions that did come in previously. Thinking about the power concerns, I think that was definitely one area that I forgot to include in the initial poll. And you acknowledged it earlier in the presentation about the amount of energy, electricity, and compute power that these systems currently need. So with the way that things are advancing and the speed of which the technology is progressing, I would be optimistic and hopeful that, as we learn more about it, hopefully those energy needs will decrease as well. But Burak, what are your thoughts around kind of the power consumption topic and kind of the infrastructure necessary for it?
There's a great article today, actually, at the New York Times about exactly this energy, and that energy is one, and I expect that to increase. So very soon, it is expected, like the number is, OpenAI's data centers expected to consume equivalent of energy that the Massachusetts as a state is consuming 3 times of it annually very soon. So it's a huge demand increase in electricity. This is why, as I mentioned, like all of the big companies are doing deals with the nuclear power plants. They are either buying nuclear power plants or investing in kind of the small nuclear reactors to create their own energy. So soon, they just don't want to be relying on the infrastructure that the government is providing or the existing energy sector is providing to them. So it's very real. Energy is one of them, and there's environmental implications. But I think not a bigger, but also equivalently important is the water resources. These data centers, which is hundreds of thousands of GPUs together get so hot that they need to be cooled down with water, right? So it becomes a huge water kind of consumption in that data service as well. As I mentioned, OpenAI with Oracle and SoftBank, they are just building huge data centers. Apple is kind of wanting to build in Houston like a huge data centers. They will need a lot of water as well, as equal like the large cities need. So it will become kind of a challenging in the near future to get those, and there will be definitely some investments or some solutions around this. It's a non-trivial question, but it's a big problem in the industry.
Absolutely. And then we had another question. Let me scroll back up because it was earlier in the presentation.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. So Michael had asked about the functions that are best suited for enterprises compared to what was done prior to generative AI. So
Mm-hmm.
my initial thought around kind of this topic is, what are some of the more, kind of day-to-day kind of
Mm-hmm.
organizationally driven tasks, answering emails, replying to customer responses, supply chain
Mm-hmm.
check-ins, so with those kind of things in mind, what are some other functions that, enterprises may want to integrate into AI, and how can they benefit that from what it was done prior?
Absolutely. So I think the one lowest hanging fruit might be the kind of the customer relations in one part, because it's easily scalable. You can have a data call center, for example. You can have chatbots and other things, but the people usually like the customers would like to talk to a real person, and the chatbot or like the AI agents are getting as close as possible to a real human, and it's going to be indistinguishable very soon, and they can answer anytime at any number of customers. With the profile, they can customize their answers, and they are very friendly all the time. There is no bad day for an AI agent. So this is, I think, the first one, easily scalable, and it can save a lot of money. And the second is similarly like a repetitive tasks, like the same problem. Like one customer comes, when there's one problem, you need to go back and look at the PDF and FAQs, and there are some processes to solve the problem. And you go back and answer this question. This is a very repetitive task, depending on what's the question. Any task, any business process that has this kind of a formula is easily replaceable with generative AI or those kind of autonomous agents right now. As you mentioned, for example, AI, like sort of email management. It is becoming much easier to get a quick summary. You can imagine everyone has a kind of a very high skilled executive assistant that in the morning you go and you have what does your day look like? What's the important meetings? What are the summaries from the previous meetings? And what's your emails and the important ones, less important ones that you should read or add categories as well, depending on your needs. And you will train this executive assistant daily. It gets better and better and better. On the first day, it will be your worst executive assistant. So it will get better and better and better as you kind of interact with these people as well. And the sky is the limit. This is why I may not know very well, but being a critical thinker and knowing very well the pain points in the business processes, anyone can come up with solutions with the generative AI is offering right now.
Wonderful. And then a really, really easy question from Brad Wyckoff. This is actually a question that I feel I could answer. What is
Mm-hmm.
the best way to try AI for the first time? Well, Brad, the great thing about a lot of these large language models is they have free options available online. If you just search ChatGPT and go onto the OpenAI website, they have a free. It's not the current GPT-4 model, but they have previous models that are freely accessible, as well as Google's Gemini, Microsoft Copilot. All of these you can just go into your web browser and search for them, and you can interact with them and ask them questions. They're really intuitive and they're really interesting and really helpful to use for a lot of different areas. All right, so we
Absolutely. I can give one example while you're reading, like the one ChatGPT is good, and you can just taste whatever you want to do. But one, for example, for my I have two sons, 5.5 and 2.5. For my older one, we have bedtime stories every day, and he gets bored with like the classic stories. And as like in the last 6 months, we are using ChatGPT's active voice mode, and it creates bedtime stories for my son. It is customized for him. He is in those stories, and he's into, let's say, Peppa Pig and Batmobile, like all of the different kind of the, cartoons. And every night he has a different story that he's in the best characters in. There's some kind of a value in those stories as well. And after we read the story, my son actually asks to draw a picture, him and the characters in the story as well. So it's a very kind of a fun way to engage and to see what the potential, what can it can do actually, I would say.
Yeah, and I think that actually leads into the next question nicely from Pamela. So I
Mm-hmm.
guess so Pamela has struggled in terms of things around creativity, and
Mm-hmm.
how can AI be a resource to be a more creative person?
Mm-hmm.
From my own personal experience, this is when I'm trying to think of like how do I write a a grant proposal or a program proposal, and I may not necessarily have a system to do that. I can put that into a large language model, and it'll kick out some basically a template suggestion. But aside from just language models, there's also artwork generative ones. I know for photography, they have really advanced, AI
Mm-hmm.
generated artwork that you can garner inspiration from. But Barak, what are your thoughts around kind of the creative avenues and creative resources?
Absolutely. Uh, and it depends. It changes from like the mode. I think that for the text, for example, in the creative writing, to me, when I write something, having the blank page is a nightmare. It takes me a lot of time going from one blank page to outline and get things together. So it's a great starter. It accelerates my starting process a lot when I have a brainstorming session with the ChatGPT. In the sense that I ask question. This is the topic. This is my thesis. I want to convey this message. This is the audience. What should be kind of a good structure? And then we go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and it gives me a very solid outline within an hour compared to a couple of days in the old days. If you're doing more kind of a creative writing, like the story is, I think asking, like creating components of a story, like the characters, the plot, and different parts, having this kind of a brainstorming with the AI actually helps me a lot. So to me, the biggest kind of, rather than like the end product I use for the editing and polishing, but the initial process of brainstorming with the AI is extremely valuable, and it just gives me a lot of different angles and aspects that I have never thought before. For the image stuff, it's getting better. For the images, we were not there, and there are a couple of questions that it gives us. You ask something, it gives you something else. But if you haven't tried yet, try the Gemini's 2.0 Flash, which came about like last week or 10 days ago. It is doing a great job. Now you can actually give a picture or a drawing and ask, give specific instructions, remove this color, change the XYZ, and it does very nicely on that one as well. So the Gemini's Flash is a very good model in terms of image creative imaging, image creation.
Wonderful. So one thing for the audience quickly, guys, I'm going to put up one more poll. Given the size and the scale of this topic and the interest that we've seen from our audience, I wanted to get a sense of if there would be an interest in continuing the conversation. I know this is a topic that I've certainly seen a lot of interest in, and obviously we've barely able to touch the surface on some very high level ideas around this. And it looks like almost every single person that's responding is saying, yes, let's continue the conversation, which is wonderful. So Barak and I had brought up, talked about this earlier in the week. We are planning to do a part two on this in April, so keep an eye out in your emails, and we will solidify a date. It'll be the same time, but it'll be later in the second half of the month of April, so keep an eye out for that. Yep, just 98, 99% of everyone wants to continue the conversation, which is wonderful. So,
Yep. And we
uh,
can discuss. I was thinking like demystifying AI can be a topic, going a little bit what to know to better kind of assess. It can be different parts as well, but I'm more than I'm very excited to look as well. And as the Lehigh, and we are also creating different kind of opportunities. Executive education is one of them. I am working on the creating some kind of executive education programs on AI. As recently, maybe I should also mention, I became the AI coordinator for the College of Business, which is very new. It's just a new, but we are trying to figure out the strategy. And I would appreciate any inputs that from your experience as the alumni in the industry, how we can make Lehigh College of Business, especially since I'm here, kind of forefront in this generative AI in business in the entire nation. I would be very appreciative if you have any feedback, any thoughts on this. I'm all ears to listen.
all right, wonderful. So we'll go through a couple more questions. We'll take it maybe 5 more minutes since we're already over
Sure.
time. There's a lot of conversation within this. So Eric asks, seems AI is most commonly trained in English. Are there any other formats that they're trained within? Because it seems that ChatGPT doesn't understand the nuances of emotions in other language. So how does it play culturally, in terms of
Yeah.
an AI model with different languages?
They work the best in English because it depends on the pre-training, whatever the data you are feeding, and the vast majority of internet is, and we are using internet data or publicly available data is in English. But the other languages have enough data that have a meaningful kind of model or good enough models as well. If it is not giving in whatever the language that you are speaking, like a nuances and different things, it will get better and better. I will just go back and refer to my previous kind of comment that the AI that you are using right now is the worst that one that you are using. And for example, right now translation, it is almost like, if not 100%, 98% there, like from any language between English or between any languages, AI can translate very, very nicely. So 98% is enough. For many people, this is good enough. This is also kind of one of the good things. Also like the threads as well. So if the results are 98% good, if it is good enough that we will stop checking the kind of if it is true or not, it's a kind of a thread as well, but it will get better and better if it is not there yet.
So we've had some questions around that are kind of policy-based questions. One of which was around if an AI, develops something or is utilized, and then a company maybe is sued for it, and it was AI generated. Who is potentially liable for things like that, as well as does generative AI at this point recognize copyright data and what that means in terms of possession of ownership over certain images or music or other things like that. So I think we could have an entirely different webinar just based on the policy
Mm-hmm.
discussion. But with that, Burak, what are your kind of thoughts around generative AI's role in terms of liability, policy, and legality?
It is the biggest kind of hurdle. It's still like the default kind of the working principle right now is the humans are responsible for the AI kind of result. The AI companies are trying to get whatever the web companies got about this kind of the liability. So, for example, if you post something on Facebook or Google finds out some kind of a data, Google is not responsible legally for that information. The AI companies are trying to get that one as well. It's not there yet. But for the companies, as all of you know, if you're using AI, it's okay mostly, but you are responsible for the output as well. This is kind of what we get so far. But there will be, as we have more autonomous agents, we need to have some kind of a legal framework to figure out who's going to be accountable. Is it the AI company who trained the model? Is it the kind of the enterprise solution provider who gave that model to the company? Probably it will go towards that kind of a direction because it's impossible. It's limiting a lot, and given the global AI arms race, we have to go in that direction to make it possible to use and give some accountability.
Wonderful.
It sounds like a dystopic science fiction movie, but we will be there very soon.
Yeah, I catch myself thinking like, how far are we away from Terminator? Every time something like AI comes up, and it's like, is it going to become our robot overlords? Which kind of like tongue in cheek, but there's also a real possibility. Hopefully, not the case. But so we'll do one final fun question before we kind of wrap up for the day. Beal wants to know, I'm curious, did you use AI to create the outline for the presentation today?
Yeah, I said yes. I did a lot actually. The way I create the outline, and I keep going back and forth with the I'm using ChatGPT and reasoning models and deep research as well. And for some of the literature review or numbers, I actually use them, and it gives me citations, and then I go back and I go to those reports and find. So it makes the entire process much quicker and reliable as well. So I know that I don't need to Google and read all the reports, and ChatGPT is giving me the best ones and then give me the summaries of them.
Wonderful. Well, there are a number of other messages and questions that we have available. We're not going to be able to get through all of them today, but Burak and I will schedule a meeting. We'll go through some of the kind of
Yeah.
general themes of the questions, and for the next presentation, we'll make sure to kind of touch on some of those high-level topics for everybody, so that way we can get you the information that you're looking for.
Absolutely. Shannon asked a question about the list of AI tools.
Mhm.
I will add one or two slides about not a reading list, but what are the reports I cited in this presentation. There are links in the presentation, but I will also have a list. And maybe I have a second slide, like what are the tools that are kind of the most widely used for different tasks. I'll just put the links, and this is so kind of a rapidly growing area. Please also let me know what I am missing. I'm more than happy to see what you are using and how we can, I learn from those as well.
Wonderful. So one last touch point, everyone. So once I close the webinar today, there will be a survey response that we'd love to get your feedback on. It really helps us inform, the types of content that we're presenting for you all, as well as ways to guide the conversation moving forward. So Burak, I really appreciate your time and your effort to present this to us. It's an ever-evolving landscape and one that we were saying earlier, we could have this presentation, a year from now, and it could be completely different in how things.
Absolutely.
So
Not
with
a year, in a month, it will be not a
that,
completely, but in a month or two, the trends
yeah,
are going to be different.
yeah, we'll do an update to the trends in the part two.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I appreciate it a lot.
Wonderful, everyone. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you shortly. Have a good day.